What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another very exciting episode right here on the MIgardener channel. In today's episode, we're going to talk about different ways that you can be killing your plants with kindness. Now, we never like to hurt our plants, but unfortunately, sometimes in the process of helping them or trying to help them, we can sometimes do too much and we can overcompensate, and too much of any good thing can sometimes be a bad thing. So that's what we're going to talk about in today's episode, but I'm not going to stop just there. I'm also going to talk about different ways that you can kind of identify that you're doing too much, because sometimes we can kind of, if we know when to put the brakes on, we can look at it from a different angle and maybe problem solve a different way so that we stop the damage from happening. It's very common. I think it's a toxic trait in a lot of people, thinking that I know what the problem is and I'm going to keep trying this solution until it works, thinking that that's the only way to fix something. I know I'm guilty of that as well. I will raise a hand. I've definitely had this happen, not just in the garden, but I mean in life in general, where we think we know the problem so certainly that that's the only solution, and sometimes we end up breaking something even more. So I don't want you guys to do that to your gardens. The season is still young, and we're starting to get a lot of people writing in, talking about some of the problems they're having, and some of them are kind of self-inflicted. So with that being said, let's talk about them. All right, so the first problem that a lot of gardeners have is over-fertilizing. Now, over-fertilizing is a very easy and honest way to kill your plant with kindness. It's just a common misconception that the more you fertilize, the healthier the plant, and the healthier the plant, the more it's going to grow or the more it's going to fruit, things like that. When in fact, fertilizer is a very essential thing, but it's only essential if it's needed. Otherwise, it can actually be harming your plant. Now, in our case, we grow 100% organically, so we're not using heavy synthetic fertilizers that are chemically derived. They're not extremely potent, so we don't ever run the risk of burning our plants. If you're using a synthetic fertilizer that is very potent, you can actually literally kill your plant. You can burn the roots so much that the roots shrink, die back, and the plant ends up dying as well from just over-fertilizing. That's a huge risk, and a lot of gardeners do face that if you're using those synthetic fertilizers. However, if you're gardening organically, one risk that you run with over-fertilizing is just stopping the plant from fruiting. Now, if you're growing something like a leafy green or like spinach, lettuce, arugula, kale, cabbage, your leafy plants, there's less of a risk of harming those. But plants that fruit, things like beans, cucumbers, tomatoes, peppers. Tomatoes is a huge one. That's why I'm buying my tomato bed. If you don't see flowers on your plants, do not assume that you need to fertilize, because you can actually continue the lack of flowers. Now, I'll repeat that because a lot of gardeners have this misconception. If you don't see flowers, that is not a sign that you need to fertilize. That is sometimes a sign that the plant is just not in its time of its life where it needs to set fruit. If there is enough fertilizer or too much fertilizer, the plant does not have any incentive. There's no urgency to set fruit. And so because of that, if your plants are super healthy and super green, if they're like just bushy as all get out, do not fertilize if you don't see flowers. Sometimes all it is just there's too much fertilizer in your soil, or they have plenty and they need to kind of work through that. They need to actually exhaust some of the nutrients in the soil. Sounds kind of counterintuitive, but they need to kind of get through some of that excess nutrients in the soil so that they can get to the point where they say, all right, I'm feeling a little bit stressed, or I'm feeling a little bit like I need to kind of shift gears a little bit. And that's where they start to set fruit. Beans will do it, cucumbers will do it, zucchinis will do it, peppers, tomatoes, any plant that sets down fruit will have this kind of trigger at some point. Every plant will trigger at a different stage in its life. But if your plants aren't yellow, if they aren't stunted, if they aren't showing signs of like yellow leaves, green veins, or like brown tips, slowing growth, if they're not showing some sign of being sickly and unhealthy, do not go to the first thing of assuming they need fertilizer, because that can be doing way more harm than good. All right, the second way that a lot of gardeners kill their plants with kindness is by overwatering. Now, this is a very easy mistake that many gardeners make because they assume their plants are 97% water, so therefore they must need lots of water, right? Wrong. Plants are amazing at conserving water, and based on the environment that they're being exposed to, sometimes plants can actually react to that even when they don't need water. And so if you water when they don't need water, you can easily see how you can be overwatering. Now, there's also times when you can be watering just because you think that they need more water. They might not even be telling you they need more water, but you just haven't learned what a proper watering schedule should look like. Now, every gardener, beginning and advanced, will at some point learn a watering schedule for your garden. People always ask me, Luke, how often should I be watering my garden? And I simply say, I cannot tell you that, because if I told you that, I'd be doing you a disservice. I would actually be risking hurting your garden, because if I say I water my garden once every 3 days, or once every 5 days, or once every other week, that is based on my soil, my location, how much sun my garden gets, how much wind my garden gets, how tall my raised beds are, or what the contours of my ground are. Is my yard a bowl shape that holds on to water, or is my garden on a hill that actually sheds water away? Is my soil type sandy? Is it clay? Do I have lots of wind that will dry out the soil? There's lots of conditions that play into how much you should be watering. And so there is never a set amount of, certain plants need a set amount of water, but there's not like a set schedule that I can give you to water your garden. You need to learn that on your own. And the general rule of thumb is if you poke your finger down 2 inches, you should feel dampness. If you dig down 2 to 4 inches, you should be able to take soil and create a ball with it without it feeling dry, clumpy, or completely crumbling in your hand. That is a sign that you have enough water. If you can do that, do not water. And over time, you'll start to learn what too much water is, or I'm watering too frequently, because that will vary. Early spring, when you have more rain, you'll water a lot less frequently than midsummer or late summer when things are drier. And so that will also vary based on the time of year that you're in. So, but also I want to go back to some of the stimulants that can be put on plants that can actually cause them to show signs of needing water when sometimes they don't actually need water. The first one is leaf curl. Now, tomatoes are a prime example of this. Peppers do it as well. If they are exposed to too much wind or too much sun, now too much sun seems crazy, but it can be a thing. Tomatoes can actually curl up. If they are curling upward, that can be a cause of too much wind or too much sun. And that's because the leaf is actually responding to that stimulus, saying, I don't want to dehydrate, so I'm going to reduce how much sun exposure my leaf has, or the wind. I'm going to reduce how much wind can blow on the underside of my leaf, because that's where the leaf actually breathes, right? Leaves breathe, they bring in carbon dioxide, they breathe out oxygen for you and I to breathe and enjoy. And so when the wind blows on the undersides of the leaves will curl up if it's very windy to protect them from dehydrating. It's a way of conserving water. But if you don't know that and you see a leaf curl, well, all right, they must need water, when in fact it doesn't actually need water. It's just too much wind and sun. So how does that mean that it needs water? It doesn't. So we can't ever assume that. The second stimulus is with leaf drooping. Now, leaves will droop for a variety of reasons. It doesn't always mean that they need water. A prime example is with cucumber plants, squash plants, pumpkin plants, and zucchini plants. So most plants in the cucurbita family have hollow stems. This means that they actually are very poor at conserving water. Doesn't mean that the soil doesn't have water. It means that the leaves and stems don't have a lot of water. And because the leaves are giant dinner plate sized leaves, if it's super hot out, what the leaves will do is literally just collapse. They'll droop. And if we see that, we assume, oh my gosh, these plants need water. I better water them. Now that's sometimes the case, but if you haven't checked your soil, if you don't even know what to look for, don't immediately go and water, because on a really hot day, if it's hotter than 90 to 95 degrees, cucumber plants and pumpkin plants, they'll literally just collapse. And they do that to protect themselves because if it actually collapses too much or it dehydrates too much, it can't rehydrate when it gets cooler. And that's why at nighttime, you'll notice that the leaves perk back up because there's not as much heat and the sun is not as strong. And so leaf drooping is the second way that a lot of gardeners, just overwater. They see that and they go, all right, leaf droop, they must need water. When in fact, you got to check your soil. You got to learn what your soil conditions are like and how often you should be watering before you start watering on a regular basis. Do you see those little holes? Or how about those little holes? Yeah, that's the third reason a lot of gardeners kill their plants with kindness. Like I said, that's the third and final reason why gardeners kill their plants with kindness, is simply by over-controlling pests. If you have 1 or 2 bug bites or your plants are starting to look a little holey, but you can't even identify the pest that's causing the problem, how are you supposed to know how to treat it? And so that can cause you to treat the wrong pest, and then when you actually find the pest, then you try to fix that pest, and now you're just doubling up or tripling up different pest control methods, and that can cause a lot of stress to your plants. Also, pests can come onto your plants and take a bite or two, and that doesn't mean they're completely eating your plant. Pests will sometimes just say, that looks like a leaf I can eat, and they'll take a bite. And sometimes they're uninterested after that, and you see the hole, you treat for the pest that you think is causing the hole, when in fact the pest has already moved on to something else that's more desirable. And that's because sometimes a little test bite is all they want to take. And if your leaves are having little holes here and there, but the overall health of the plant is improving, the overall growth is continuing, it's outgrowing the damage, don't worry about it. I know us as gardeners want to have the most perfect crops possible, and that's because we set the standards so high when we go to the grocery store. We think that's what a tomato should look like, that's what a cucumber should look like, that's what lettuce should look like, or kale or cabbage should look like. And it's that, that perfect kind of pinnacle of perfection, right? It's that pinnacle of perfection that we aim for, but when we see a couple holes, we instantly say, all right, it's time to drop an atom bomb on this sucker because I've got a pest problem. When in fact, in the large scope of your garden, you don't really have a giant pest problem. Now, if you do start to see a pest problem and it is actually getting out of control, that's really where you want to start monitoring. You want to start monitoring because the first couple holes are a sign that, yeah, there might be pest presence. That's not a reason to overreact. The second step is the monitoring step. Once you actually have the holes, then you monitor for the insect. You monitor for increased damage to your plants. If the damage has stopped, well, that's the monitoring process. That's as far as you go. If you start to see more holes or bigger holes, then you start to take proactive approaches, which is actually going out there and checking through periodic times throughout the day. Check at night, it might be slugs. Check during the hot part of the day, it might be a grasshopper. Check, put up a trail cam, look for rabbit droppings. It might be a rabbit, who knows? There's lots of different animals that like to take nibbles of your plants. And if you're spraying your plants down with neem oil, well, rabbits don't give a hoot. Rabbits don't care. Neem oil does not stop a rabbit. If you're spraying your plants down with cayenne, that's not going to affect a grasshopper. That only affects mammals. Cayenne only affects mammals because they have taste buds that can sense capsaicin. So a grasshopper is not going to care about the cayenne you just sprayed on your plants. There's so many things that you can do, and the more you spray your plants, the more stressed they're going to be. And after a while, they're simply going to say, all right, I'm keeling over. I'm kicking the bucket. So that's the next reason. And the final reason why gardeners kill their plants with kindness is by over pest controlling. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. If you did, make sure to throw a like up there. That really helps spread this video around. And also, if you have issues with your garden, post them in the comments box down below. I'll try to kind of give you some pointers as to what I think might be the problem. And, maybe we can help each other out. So, as always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel reminding you to grow big or go home, and we'll catch you all on the next episode. All right.